thank you, Petra, for letting me come out. That's awesome.
Well, thank you
And,
for
and,
coming.
and thanks for having my boys here.
I love having them. Thank you for letting me have them.
So I think that's one of the things that I feel is there's such a family
Yes.
atmosphere here in Estonia. I
Yeah.
mean, it's like you're so close,
Yeah.
and everybody here is really close. I think that's something that people don't. It's like you're part cottage industry,
Yeah.
but you produce enough tents to satisfy a huge market.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, yeah, I mean, we still definitely have the small business for sure and family feel because, I mean, technically we still are a small business. But yeah, we do a lot with the people we have. That's for sure. Or the people that we have do a lot, I should probably say.
And so, like some companies branch off into clothing
Yeah.
and trekking poles and all that, but you're sticking with tents. Is that just the decision?
Yes, yeah, I mean, for sure. My dad, obviously he could have built it much faster when he started it and like done so much more with other products. Like that's the natural path that, like you said, that all companies do. But he always wanted to focus completely on the quality first and then slowly develop other things that might fit. So basically tents that fit. So as long as we feel like we have things that we can continue doing with the tents or on our tents, we want to keep doing that. So focus on what we're really good at.
Yeah, so that's so we were talking about product development earlier, and so you have certain models that you've had for a long time, and then you've come out with new models, and you've gotten rid of old models.
Very few.
Is
Yes.
it when you just how do you make those kind of decisions?
Well, so we get rid of a model if it's not selling well. That's basically bottom line. Like it's not, obviously, yes, if we thought there was a model that was not good, we would get rid of it. But hopefully we've done enough development work before that it is a good model. But then, it might not be something that fits in a niche. Like we had the Caron 2, for instance, which seems like a natural thing to have. But the weight difference between the Caron 2 and the Caron 3 is so small, and the space advantage that you'd have with the Caron 3 made it so it didn't make sense to have it. So that's kind of, and then we had the Stalin, and that also kind of went away because it was a 2-person and a 4-person. The 4-person is really kind of the same as the Caron 4, and then the 2-person. And it was super nice to have because you slept opposite the tunnels. They have really huge doors, but then the weight became an issue. So people loved it, but very few people wanted to buy it because of the weight. So it's always that kind of balance that we have to deal with.
Yeah, the whole weight.
Weight to space, weight versus features. I mean, that goes for all models, like especially when we're working on the lighter, like the yellow label or even the red label line. There's so many great details that we could add. People say, oh, why don't you put this? Why don't you put this? Why don't you do this? And it's, I guarantee we probably have thought about it. And we always have to weigh back and forth because if they go over a certain point, it just doesn't become interesting for people. So it's that constant balance. We wish we could put everything on them, but then no one would want them.
Right. Well, it seems like you have a real nice selection for weights, number of people, conditions.
Yeah. We tried to make sure that everything fits. And that's kind of why we introduced a labeling system some years ago, because it was really hard to decide. It seems like they all look the same kind of. And the labeling system was to help people differentiate and choose and things. So we want to make sure that more or less, in each label, you have something that fits within.
How many models do you have?
I think it's 34, maybe
34
something like
models.
that. Something like that.
Yeah, and people still want more, it seems.
I mean, there's still more things. We have a...
I don't know any other tent manufacturer that has that many models.
Well, that's...
Is there? I doubt it.
Yeah, I'm sure there probably are. If you combine the 2 and the 3 and the 4, so it's kind of... But it's obviously what we do. But we have, on purpose, a slower developing pace. Like I've said before, we don't... it's very easy when you don't have your own manufacturing. You can make a little drawing and send it off to China, and that can be made within a few months. We have a much slower process. We have development projects, a long list of them for the next X amount of years, but we have 2 people that are working on product development. So my dad still is kind of the head of the actual development, and then we have Joel and Sofia who work with developing new products. So Joel has been working on the LX3, and Sofia worked on the Onion models, and so
I think taking the Onion to yellow was genius.
Yeah, I mean
That was awesome.
It's a good model. I like it, and I like it. Yeah, it's a really
that's actually one of my faves.
Yeah,
actually, I have a few favorites. So.
Me too.
Yeah.
34.
34. like materials. Like somebody asked, like when you went from 1500 Curlon to 1200 Curlon, is that the technology, the fabrics are changing?
So we actually went from the 1500 to the 1800.
The 1800.
Yeah, so the 1500 became 1800 because with technology being better, we were able to make it stronger. And then with that, after some years, we were able to find it and make it still strong and lighter. So there's variations and grades within that that we have. But so we have our philosophy that all the tents have to be the durability and longevity and ease of use and comfort and low weight. So we have all of those aspects that have to be met within any material, any model. So low weight doesn't come highest. So there are fabrics that are lighter that we could use, but then they don't meet our other criteria of strength and durability and
because you're in your poles, of course.
Yeah.
That's another big component.
A big component. They're from DAC, and they are by far the strongest of anything that's on the market.
Yeah, a great interview with
Jake, yes.
which was great. I learned more about DAC, and they're a green company.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of treating everyone like family, I mean, his company with everyone from the factory floor to in his main office, it's amazing. He does a fabulous job.
So when you test, obviously you test with wind tunnel machines, probably over in Estonia?
No, it's sitting in the backyard behind the office
really?
in Sweden.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's in Sweden.
Okay, that's great. Is it like an old snowblower machine?
It is a snow machine. It's a remade snow machine.
That's great.
That is, and what we do differently. So we sometimes get the question of why we don't give wind rating. I've seen recently there were some questions about doing a wind video on every single model, but it doesn't give an accurate statement to just say, and you can never say, oh, it's going to meet 100 miles an hour, period. What happens with anyone who says that is that they have wind tunnels where the tent is bolted into the cement floor, and then the wind machine is turned on. And then they blow on it until it breaks, and that's the wind speed that they give. But the reality is not that. The wind is going to change. Mm-hmm. Your pegs are going to come out. Ground conditions are different. So what we do first of all is, because it doesn't matter how strong you are, if you can't set up the tent, there's no point in having a strong tent, right? So we turn on the wind machine, and then we go in front of it and start setting up the tent. You take the site turrets, for instance, the big tent. When the girl who was working as the developer at the time, or the engineer who put it together, Linda, is a yay high, and it was her job to make sure she could set it up in the wind machine, and she changed a couple of features on it. If you think about the pole sleeves, normally all the pole sleeves are on the same side
right.
on the tent. On the side turrets, it's this way, because otherwise if the wind is coming that way, you can't set it up. So little details like that are there because you have to be able to set it up in the wind.
Well, that's one thing I noticed, I think, right away. I think it was on site terrace I noticed, is like you designed it so if you're in inclement weather, you've got your best chance of getting this tent set up.
Yeah, so we have a philosophy that every single one of the tents you should be able to set it up by yourself in the dark in a strong wind wearing big gloves.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
And that is for all of them. So that's how we use our wind machine. So that's why we can't say, oh, here's a wind machine rating, because we also can't. Ideally, right, you'd have a wind machine that you can come from all sides, and we don't have that. So ours comes in one direction, but then we set it up for really long periods of time. So we'll set it up for 24 hours in the storm. And that's when you're starting to see wear. Is usually, so like there's one project we're working on right now, it was great for 2 hours. After 7 hours, it wasn't as great anymore. So to some extent, we over-test, especially our yellow label tents, right? Like they are over-tested. So it's that long-term test that we can do there. But then obviously then we do in the lab, all the materials we test in the lab. We also have like the homemade tests, you put things in the freezer, you bang on them, you put them on the tire, anything. We have fabric pieces up on the roof. And then also field testing.
Yeah, you're pros out in the field.
Not pros, it's our own staff.
Or your own staff, but you also have.
Not for testing.
But you get some kind of input, or
Not for testing.
Not for testing. Oh,
No.
Wow, really?
No, I mean, yes, if we have a new material and we need someone who's going to
All
use
right,
it.
not for testing. I get it. Yeah.
If we have someone who's going to use it for 2 years, we might sew different fabric pieces in the floor. And if we have someone that we know who's out for the next year or so, or the next 3 months or something like that, so we might do that. But for our own internal testing before a model is brought out, it's all internal. It's, because we live, our office in Sweden is basically same latitude as Nome.
Oh, okay.
Or Denali. So we are up there. Tree limit is at, I think, maybe 500 meters or something like that. So
I did pick up cross-country skis finally.
Very good.
Because I watched you guys go cross-country skiing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that
Ski
must be
touring.
great.
It's fantastic up there. The area in Jämtland and Sweden.
Get
where
out
we are.
somewhere.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Because snowshoeing and hiking, you can only go so far.
Yeah.
But that
No,
looks
it's
awesome.
amazing. Yeah,
So
it's
I'm going to start doing
beautiful.
that next year. So.
Yeah.
But I guess you get some kind of satisfaction when you do see your tents in Antarctica,
Absolutely.
or like that one guy that you had that he had the avalanche kind of come down on top of his
Alex.
solo.
Yes.
Love that.
Yeah.
That was
I
great.
don't love when that happens.
No.
But he was fine.
He was
the
fine.
tent was fine. Yeah, on Aconcagua. On Annapurna is where he was.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we obviously have people using them in amazing places, and especially the poles. We do a lot of poles, and we never pay anyone to use our tents, so that's another thing, and that's why we often don't you don't see a lot of Everest expeditions using them, because we don't give huge discounts or anything like that to outfitters, and so the people that are using them and saying good things about them, or the expeditions, it's they chose them because that's what they needed.
Oh yeah, I think a lot of people, they ask me things, and it's like, if you're gonna go out,
Yeah.
and you want, and your life is going to be marginally in peril.
Yeah.
What do you want?
Yeah.
And so I say it all the time. It's like, I could take one of my ultralight tarps that I've made, but I'm going out in the winter right now, and I want a tarp that's gonna.
Yeah, I mean, we always say not everyone needs to have the quality that we build into the tents, and that's totally okay. It's not for everyone. So often we talk about we have the people that need it, the people that think they need it, and then people who want it just because it's there, or because they want to hand on the tent to their children, or they want to have that extra margin of safety. And I think that's important.
And also, and I do a video, I point out that, when you give a weight for your tent, say it's the Anyan 2, that's the bag, that's the spare pole, that's the pole sleeve, that's more than enough stakes.
Yeah, in the pack weight, yeah.
And the pack weight, and if you go, apples to apples with, say, another tent, they get really close.
Yeah, because then you have to look at the minimum weight. So that's kind of, on the back of our catalog, you have all the weights, and it's really easy that because we give a weight, it's very easy to stare yourself blind at the weight.
Right.
And a lot of people don't think about the weight of their extra clothing, or there's so many things. So I always tell people to look at their their pack as a whole, and then kind of look at that. Are there other pieces that you can shave some weight on, rather than doing it on your shelter, which is going to be your comfort and your safety, depending on where you are again, right? But I think that's really important.
And the beauty of how it goes up. I
Yeah.
mean, that's worth a lot of money to me. I mean, having the inner go up
Yeah.
with the outer is priceless.
It's
You probably don't know any different though.
We've played with it, but for stability reasons also, it makes a big difference with having the poles on the inner or on the outer tent. And then we have again, we build in safety margins everywhere. So like the raised pole sleeves on the tunnel tents or the clips on the dome tents, they're all raised away from the main body of the tent. So if you have a damage, so say that the pole breakage, which can be the most common in a really bad weather. Worst case scenario, if that pole breaks, it goes through the pole sleeve, but the rest is intact. So you tape up your pole sleeve, you tape up your pole, and you can continue your trip. You don't have to risk that going through the main body of the tent. So you have basically 3 layers between you and a pole breakage. You have the inner tent, you have the outer tent, you have the pole sleeve material. So there's always redundancy built into things like that, and that they're raised off of the body a little bit, that they're big enough to put 2 pole sleeves in. So everything is built on purpose like that. So,
I didn't know that.
yeah.
That's pretty cool. So I tried to figure out what that fabric is that you have for the pole sleeves, and it's not floor material.
No, it's a different material.
It's something totally different than all the rest of the materials.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
So that's really.
So you need, because there you need a little bit more puncture proofing than the outer tent as well. So it's different materials.
Oh wow. Yeah, I try. I inspect your stuff, and I inspect all the stitching and everything you do because I want to learn, obviously. But you can tell so many things, but I didn't. I mean, even you're saying things I didn't even have a concept about. So that's great.
Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah, we'll have to go on a trip next time. I'll tell you even more things.
Oh yeah, you kind of touched on things that you might want to do. You're constantly looking to the future. Mm-hmm. And is there any hints of anything that you want to let out? Can't do it. But you're always testing materials, and
always testing materials. We're constantly looking at new materials and new features and new fittings, and also we're constantly. So I talked about, we have Joel and Sophia who are working on development, but that also is, so Sophia the last few years has been working on improvements on existing products. So we're constantly looking. So like if you take the Caron, for instance, that we've had since 81, it's still the Caron. It doesn't look like it did in 81, but you can still see the same model, but it's constant improvements that happen. And there's so many improvements that we constantly do that are phased in. So it's not a year or anything. It's phased in depending where it is in production that we don't talk about. So, like for instance, the little the door stopper, the little toggle that locks the door. Mm-hmm. That was phased in over time, and it's not until like maybe last year or so we can start talking about it because we know that all models have it. So, it's constant improvements where.
That little triangle I noticed in the LX 3, right, where the zippers all come together.
Yes.
I'd never noticed that before.
Yeah, that's on the LX 2 also. But
Is it? Yeah. I was like, look at that. There's this nice little triangle just to keep, when the wind's probably just rattling. Everything.
Yeah. And also it depends on like the door configuration, how you open the door, so that is done so that it's easiest to use the door from all directions. Whereas if you have it in a different way, it might be tighter there, but then it's not such easy access. It's also things like that we have to weigh back and forth.
And you do have great setup videos for every tent. And like lately on my videos, I've been talking a lot about making sure you're really, using all the features of the tent and understanding all those features, especially like the guying out of a tent. Yeah. And even at the base on your outer, there's points. Yeah. And so I suppose there's like a holistic approach to your tents because, of course, everybody talks about condensation like that's some crazy
It's our fault.
Yeah, it's Hilleberg's fault that there's condensation. But yeah, I noticed on the Alec 3, where there's on the outer, you have the ability to actually enhance the whole tent
For sure.
if you work everything. So
Yeah. Obviously, there's when it comes to condensation, there's only so much you can do. If you have higher humidity outside than inside, and there's no air movement or nothing in the inside that's warming up and driving out the moisture, there will be condensation. Fact of life. It's not our fault. It's not a leaking tent. It's not a design flaw. It's like if you take a tarp and set it up where you have everything is open underneath or all around it, you'll have condensation underneath in the morning. And that's not because it didn't have enough venting, because it's all open around it, right? It's because you have a solid surface. Same thing, you have your glass of beer, you pour your cold beer in it, it's not the glass that's leaking, right?
good analogy.
Yeah, I figured you'd know that one.
But like a human exhales something like a liter of water in a
exactly.
night.
And then you have some people that say, oh, well, my buddy's tent, he's in the same tent, his didn't, so mine must be leaking. But it's also because of the different kind of moisture that moisture levels that we let out, the differences in sleeping bags and how hot we sleep, how cold we sleep. All these factors are, so we can't even, when we do testing, we can't compare a tent side by side almost. It's almost
and dogs breathe a
they,
lot.
Wet dogs are breathable, yeah. Obviously, any type of cooking, anything like that is, which of course you do 100 meters away from the tent. But setup does have obviously it's important with that to optimize the tent's performance. That the tent is set up like it looks like in the catalog. We often see tunnel tents, especially, or the Acto or Anon, where they're just hanging and
I
sagging.
think I've done that.
Yes, you have.
I feel terrible about it. I look at these pictures. I go, I did not set it up.
Seeing a sagging tunnel tent, it breaks my heart.
I bet.
It's tough. And also, simple things like the pole holders, tightening the pole holders so that it's all the way up against the tent. It's so important that I think also on this market in the U.S., people are so used to the freestanding tents where you peg down by the poles.
Mm-hmm.
So especially in the beginning when I first started, I always saw these people are pegging down at the rings by the bottom of the poles and then trying to pull out the vestibules, but it's impossible to get a good stretch doing that. Or some people pegging the guy line, the guy lines on the vent first and then trying to do it. You can't get a good stretch. So you have to do like the back end, lift it up, pull it out, and then the other. So with only those 4 pegs, you should have a perfect pitch.
Right, you say that.
Yeah.
4-peg pitch.
Yeah, and then you add everything else. And with the guidelines, it's so easy to get really strong with them, with the line runners. But you want to make sure that the guidelines are holding onto the tent but not pulling on it. The second you start pulling on it, deforms the poles. So you get a pole that's flattened a little bit on top, and then it bulges out on the end. And that's when we see breakage on the poles here at that end, because then you have a wind coming on it, and it pops them out here. Whereas so it should be holding. So that's why also guideline placements, like where we place the guidelines on there, is also a huge thing. And having the double rather than just having one, having 2 guidelines on each pole also supports that whole concept.
It does. And there's some guys on, I know you look at Facebook, but there's some engineers that are on there that explained it to me, and I think to everybody, guidelines.
Yeah.
And it was just amazing.
Yeah.
And everything your development team's probably working on, they were sitting there going, well, this is this and this is this. And
also a longer guideline will always give you better. So if you can have your guidelines on the longest setting, okay, if there's a lot of people running around, maybe that's not ideal, but on the longest setting and like that. So.
Yeah, and then at the end of your videos now, you're actually showing how to put it away sometimes. So
yes, so we've changed the video. So since John started working on the videos, we've changed the concept. So we brought it over here, and we're doing them here. And so we're working on.
You have a great video of how to roll doors on some of your tents.
Yeah, we did that because we realized that there was a lot of people that got frustrated that the doors were coming down, and so we figured it's just a super quick video for us to do, and so we did that.
Well, the curl-on's so slick.
Yeah.
When you're trying to roll it, it just doesn't.
And also just the trick of not just using that loop and hanging over, because then it'll start falling down here, or so I always roll it and aim at it and then go that way.
Yeah. So I take so much pride now when I roll up my tent because and there's ways to roll it too,
Yeah.
for your benefit.
Yeah, for sure.
So the next time you get it, it's, if you're, especially on a trip
Yeah.
and the weather goes south on you, you can do things. So
Yeah.
fantastic. Fantastic. So let me see here. You already covered kind of the back order question. You're just very successful, especially with certain models right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's always, so we do our very, very best to plan. In the production, even though we have our own factory, we can't just call them up and say, "Oh, swap this and this," right? Because our factory is tight. We're producing every minute that we can. It's tight, so we have to do what we can to maximize production. So we have it locked a certain time. So then, of course, the colors are always, I shouldn't complain. We don't have that many models and that many colors compared to what someone who makes jackets or anything like that. So we have, a lot more flexibility. But, with the Alec, we thought originally that, the orders for the Alec 3 would take away from the Alec 2, so they would even out a little bit more. But the preseason orders on the Alec 3 were as high, they were higher than the Alec 2 last year, and the Alec 2 was also higher than last year. So there goes my production. Yeah, so we thought it would be eating a little bit from each other, but yeah. So I do the planning for both companies or for both offices, both Sweden and here, and trying to figure that together. Because in Europe we have more retailers with big preseason orders. Here in the U.S. we do both a little bit of retail and then a big part direct sales within the U.S. So, figuring out the direct sales is always harder because you don't have the preseason orders. So you base it on last year. So it's always a puzzle.
Oh, it's always
a puzzle. We do the best we can.
So a lot of people want a black label solo. Just so you know.
Really? I didn't know that.
There's those guys over in UK mainly, where I think they're all at the local pub, and then the wind.
Well, who knows? Maybe it's in the works.
The wind picks up, and they grab their Hillebergs and head up to the hills.
Yeah, as they should.
Yes, they should.
Smart guys.
And they it's so funny to see. And
no, it's
great.
I
think a lot of people, they ask me about a certain tent.
I've seen it.
Yeah, and a lot of times I will refer them to the people in the UK.
Yeah.
Because those, especially like with the solo, those guys they know everything about that tent, and they've used that tent in every condition imaginable.
Yeah.
And those guys over there, I just love them. They're so fun.
Yeah, they do.
So things like there's things in the future. Camo stuff. I don't know if you guys are gonna touch on camo at all.
Camo's tricky because there's so many camos.
Right.
So then you can get into the camo wars.
Stuff. It's all great stuff. So.
But so you get into kind of the camo. Which camo is better? Like I like this camo. So.
And winter camo and summer camos.
In this country, you can get into like the real tree versus mossy oak, and you can go into that whole. So camo's a little tricky. Which camo do you decide on and like that. So we haven't had a huge amount of requests for it, actually. So
if demand goes way up for some reason.
If we get a huge amount, I mean, it's technically, we'd have to pick a camo and then go with it and go from there. We'll see.
Now, the people in New Zealand would love for you to come down. Come to New Zealand. They'll tour you around.
We would love, yes. It's on my list of things to do.
One of those tents back there was from New Zealand, the one that she was working on. So New Zealand loves you. I did get the question, and since you were raised this way, there's we want to know what your idea is on getting the family involved in.
Since I was almost born in a tent.
Yeah, you were probably born in a tent.
So we obviously were out very early on, and I think like we take Johan, who is one of our sales guys in Europe. He had his paternity leave, and they were out, him and his girlfriend and their new son, who was a few months old, they did a long winter tour in Sweden. So, not everyone would do that or feel comfortable with that. So obviously you have to really know what you're doing and be comfortable. But I think otherwise the barrier to going outside is I think we set it more for ourselves. It's not the children, as long as you have it really well planned. Obviously they had a really well planned trip with food, extra warm things. But they were out and they did really
And you
well.
were out constantly.
We were out early on, both winter and summer, and
canoeing and cross country skiing.
Yeah, we did canoeing, and then they just popped us in the canoe, my brother and I, or in the sled. So we'd have one sled, so they'd pull us, or we'd walk very slowly, or they'd carry us on their back. So very early on, and then we were, I think it was about 4. We did our first night out by ourselves. Obviously, Mom and Dad set up the tent out in the forest about 1 kilometer from our house and set it up, and my brother was 5 probably, and so they left us, and then we stayed out and we woke up and we had our breakfast, and then we went back in the house, and it was apparently it was 4 o'clock in the morning when we came back, because it's light all night in Sweden, so we didn't know what time it was, so we'd had our breakfast, we had our night.
I'm sure your parents just slept real soundly the whole time.
Yeah, but so I've always been out, and I have friends who go out and just, make it a natural part. Maybe you start with smaller hikes, or it's. I think it's important. It's about being out. It's not about the distance, and I think that's in general whether you're with children or not. I think some people, have done some clinics for different people of packing and what to bring and things like that. And I think there's sometimes an intimidation factor of going out. I found it, especially among women, that it has to be far, it has to be heavy, it has to be difficult. You're supposed to suffer a little bit. And I like to go out because I enjoy it. I think my dad says this in one of the catalogs, one of the favorite things is camp life. Walking out and then being in camp, setting up your tent, hanging out, whether you're by yourself or not, it's just that experience of being away from everything and being out. And the best way to do that is to do it with a tent.
Yes.
So I think just kind of planning ahead well and making the adventure be everything about it, not the distance you travel or like the view you can get to.
And your Hong Kong people, I think, they family tent like no one else.
Yeah, both in Japan, Korea, I think Taiwan and Hong Kong, because there's so many people, first of all, and because you can't really sleep in tents in many areas in the backcountry. So they have these campsites set up and they camp, and so there it's obviously a little bit more about brand. Usually they can show what they have. So that's why we sell more Atlas and Stall and XL there than anywhere else, because they have these big elaborate setups and they're amazing.
Yeah, and their food.
It's beautiful.
And you can tell that's like family.
And
crazy.
It's amazing what they do. When we had our event in Japan, I was supposed to judge the cooking competition with it. They had a one pot cooking competition, and I was thinking it was going to be really easy to find one that was going to be the favorite. And I think there was probably like 15, 20 people that had to participate, and it was amazing. The food was fantastic, and I had to give like 6 awards for makeup different best of this category, this category. It was amazing, like what they do.
I would love to go to one of those.
Oh,
that looks
you should.
so
I think,
fun.
Yeah, they've planned Hong Kong and Taiwan. We'll have one next year again. I think January, March, that time of year. So
yeah,
awesome. It's amazing.
Okay, I got the last question.
Okay.
This is it. What tent is your favorite?
Which son is your favorite? You
I
can't
know,
pick. Don't say it.
Yeah.
I can't pick one. It's it depends on what I do. I mean, I make it. Well, no, I always try to use different models when I go out. Obviously we kind of gravitate towards certain models. If I go by myself now in the summer, I have to probably say that the Nyack is pretty nice.
Yeah, that is a great tent.
So I really like that for myself as a solo summer. But otherwise, I use, it depends on what I do, where I go, how far, if I'm by myself, or if I go with other people, how many people, like what's their comfort level, So
I think that's
I have the
it's like,
luxury of
yeah.
choosing.
Yeah, it's like I couldn't pick one. People ask me, it's like
It really depends.
it really depends,
Yeah.
and I have definite there's certain tents that
Yeah.
are my favorites, but I couldn't pick one.
But also, something that might be my favorite might not be your favorite. It depends on what your comfort level is, right? So, like, someone who, like, we have some people who love the octo and some people who would hate the octo.
Right.
It depends on, like, what your criterias are of what you need when you sleep, right? When you go out. Some people's comfort level are different than other people's. John, who is 6'7", his or almost 2 meters, when he, as a 2 meter tall person, what his comfort level is different from what someone who is much shorter thinks.
And what are your tents? You design all your tents around
Basically, my brother.
your brother.
Yeah, he's close to 2 meters, 190, something like that.
Okay.
But there's certain angles that you can't, with the tunnel tents like the Nalo, Anyan, and not much where we have a slanted back end. You can't just change the angle or the length and get a different angle. At some point we have to compromise on some comfort feature to lower the weight. That someone, so yes, there are people or many people who will touch the back wall of those tents. If you're not comfortable with that, a chitin or a caron or something like that would be more comfortable. So it depends on what your comfort level, and if you're just starting out, it's hard to know, or if you've always had one tent, But that's why whenever we talk to someone about what they're going to choose, we always try to, like, what do you like? What do you do? What's your kind of trying to get? So that's why it's hard to say this is the best tent for. When we did the label system, it was important for us to have neutral labeling. So we have the colors rather than having expedition level labeling. Right. Because if someone comes to me and they're going to go to the North Pole or South Pole, they'll get a caron, or I will recommend them a caron. If we have a family that's just starting out and they want to have something that's going to be the safest and the easiest to handle, the most comfortable for it, it's the same caron.
Right.
So
the great tent.
Yeah. So it totally depends on what
Nice
they're
and
doing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
great tent.
easier to set up, comfortable, and safety margins.
Yeah.
So it depends.
Awesome. Well, that's it. Thank you so
easy.
much.
No, thank you.
This was a great thing for me. So
Yeah.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
And
thank you for
I
coming.
love your tents, and thanks for taking care of the boys. And,
I love the boys.
Is there anything you want to let anybody? Is there something that you need to say to the world?
No, I think we're with the fan groups and the owners group, and we're really humbled and honored by the passion that we see out there for our brand and for what we do, and I think that's we take that responsibility as a very big responsibility. We don't take it lightly that people are so invested in it, and so we work.
You're there.
Yeah, and we try to work. Like I said, we spend sleepless nights over trying to make sure, what are we going to do, and to make things the best we can. So that's kind of what we try to do.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was great.